Hello and welcome to VR Views. Now this is a video that I intended to make last year, as that would have made more sense, but I have instead ended up pushing it until right now, which is October 2025. October is actually the anniversary month of my channel. I don't remember exactly which day, but I figured I may as well go ahead and do it now before it gets even later. This is going to be another top 10 list, and this is going to be the top 10 of my top 10 figures from the previous 10 years. Kinda. From 2014 to 2023. Like I said, I did intend to make this last year. So basically, I'm going to be going back and revisiting and ranking everything that has been my top figure for all of those years that I just mentioned. Surprisingly, I did still have all of these figures, so I thought it might be a cool little thing to go through and do as like a 10-year retrospective anniversary thing. As always, the rankings are fairly arbitrary, but I thought it might be a fun little thing to do. So let's go ahead and get started. Number 10 is SH Figuarts Android 16, and this was my top figure for 2015. And there's going to be quite a few Dragon Ball figures on this list, so be prepared for that. This figure is quite disappointing in a few ways, which is why it gets to be the bottom of the list, and honestly something that Bandai should really consider remaking at some point, but I realize that he's not exactly the most popular character in the world. His size is like really bad. He's way too short. And he was too short whenever they made him back then, and Bandai's sizes for this line have gotten way bigger, so he looks way out of scale with everything modern. He barely comes with any hands. Like structurally, he's fine. He hasn't aged amazingly, but you know, he's pretty good by the standards of the time period that he came out. Aesthetically, he still looks pretty good. No massive issues there, really. But overall, by modern standards, he's not exactly impressive. And even back then, he wasn't that great. I think that 2015 may have just been a slow year, because I don't think he would have been the top spot for many other years. Number 9 is SH Figuarts Nappa, which was my top figure for 2017. This is another not super impressive release. I remember it took a long time for them to actually make Nappa. The first time that they revealed Nappa, it was the unarmored one. That's really janky looking on retrospect, but at the time a lot of people were very excited about it. But then eventually they ended up releasing this smaller and fully armored version of Nappa, and he is fine. He's had a recolor event exclusive release, which I actually probably prefer to this one. I just prefer the yellow and blue color palette, but this one is still fine. He still looks pretty good. He has a lot of the same problems that most figures with the Saiyan armor have, where the little flaps and the shoulder pads and stuff get in the way. But ultimately, he's not too bad. He's a bulkier figure, so the articulation's a little bit limited. But he's not something I would say that desperately needs to be remade, unlike 16, but he's not a super impressive figure. Once again, I imagine that this year was probably pretty slow. I don't think he would have made a top spot on some other years. Number 8 is SH Figuarts Broly, and it's kind of sad for him to be this low down, but this figure just simply has not aged well. He was my top pick for 2014, so he's the oldest figure on this list, and he was my favorite figure just of all of the things that I owned for a very long time, but he's just aged very poorly. I have no doubt that Bandai could severely improve upon this figure. They reissued him recently. I don't remember if it was a different paint job or whatever, but they reissued him recently in some format, and then he's also got like 2 different event exclusive repaints, so they've gotten a lot of use out of the figure. But actually fully remaking him, he would benefit a lot from that. And there's been a very impressive third party Broly made by Beast Deities, I believe is what their studio was called. It looks so much better compared to this one. I don't care for the size of it, but just purely on aesthetics and architecture and everything, it's so much better than this one. That being said, I still like this figure to a certain extent. Some of that is probably nostalgia, because I realize he is a bit wonky looking, and he's not exactly the easiest thing to pose and stuff. But I do still have a certain enjoyment for this figure, but I could not realistically put him any higher than this, because I feel like he just has not aged well at all, which is very sad. Number 7 is Figma Leo. That's a more recent one. That is my top figure from 2022. And I think overall I still pretty much like this figure. Like he's relatively a modern Figma architecture. That's only a few years ago. He represents the art style, the Trigger sort of art style for Promare. And I think he just looks really good. He's not the most articulate thing in the world. Figma tend to be sort of, they vary, but, he's not amazing, but he does most of the things you want him to do. And I really don't have much to complain about whenever it comes to him. I would gladly still buy this figure if it was released today, and I didn't already have one. Like, he still looks really nice. And I like having him paired with Gallo on my shelf. And that's really all there is to it. He just he's sitting down here a bit lower than some of the other stuff because he's not like super impressive. But he's a cool figure, and if you like Promare, definitely worth picking up. Number 6 is SH Figuarts Sukuna. This is another recent one. This is the most recent one, actually. This is the one from 2023. And he's not actually like a super impressive release or anything. I think he earned that top spot because he was just the best Jujutsu Kaisen thing that released that year, and I really like Jujutsu Kaisen, but he is also still a really nice figure. He's got some cool expressions. He's got just a very solid, like, modern Bandai SH Figuarts articulation structure. You can do most of the things that you would want to be able to do with him, and he's just a very solid release. There have been better Figuarts releases, but there's been a lot that are worse than this. So if you still need Sukuna, definitely worth picking up. That line is still maybe ongoing. There's been a couple of reveals recently, but not a whole lot of news on that line. I'm hoping that it continues on for a while. Number 5 is SH Figuarts Beerus, which was my top figure for 2016. And I still really like this figure. It helps that I just really like Beerus in general, but I don't think this one has aged as poorly as some of the other ones. He is still using old architecture, but I don't know, he just doesn't feel as outdated as some of the other ones. Now, he could still definitely benefit from a new release. I know he had like an event exclusive repaint that's barely different, but like actually redoing his architecture and making a new figure would not be unwelcome. But I think he still works perfectly fine with modern figures. And I've just always thought he's very expressive, and he needs to be for the character that he is. And I just like messing with him, and he's just one of those figures that's just fun to mess with. And I still like him to this day, and that's why he is ranked higher than all of the other old Dragon Ball figures that are on this list pretty much so far. Number 4 is Storm Collectibles Goro, which was my top figure from 2018. As I'm sure I said at the time of making the original video, Goro is something that I wanted a figure of pretty much the entire time I was collecting, and it took a long time for somebody to finally come around and make like a good Goro figure. And this is a good Goro figure. I would say it's probably a great Goro figure. Storm has made a more modern Goro since then, which I think uses probably some of the same parts. And I'm sure that release is also fine. But this right here, this is the kind of Goro that I want. It's actually the only Mortal Kombat figure that I still have. I used to have basically every figure in that line, and up to a point. And this is now the only one that I still have, and honestly, he may not stay around forever. But I did keep him until now, as he is my favorite Mortal Kombat character, and I do really like this figure. At this point, Storm no longer has the Mortal Kombat license, and McFarlane is doing stuff with Mortal Kombat now, and it's possible they may make a Goro at some point. It seems like the kind of thing that Todd might like to make, as it is a big monster man. I think that there's pretty much zero chance that it would be better than the Storm Collectibles offering, but I am curious to see if they do end up making one. Until then, I would say that this is the definitive Goro figure if you want a figure of Goro, or the other Storm release if you prefer the more modern version. Number 3 is the SH Figuarts Piccolo. I believe this one's called the Proud Namekian version, and this was my top figure for 2020. As I'm sure I've said several times before, Piccolo is my favorite Dragon Ball character, and this remains my favorite release of Piccolo that they've made. They have made newer releases with better capes, but other than that feature, this one is definitely my favorite one. Just in terms of aesthetics, I really prefer for him to have the pink muscle patches, and this is the most modern release that has that. So until they make one that looks like this, but has the new cape from the most recent Piccolo release, this one will remain my favorite Piccolo. He's not super old, so he still holds up perfectly well with all other modern Figuarts. And I think if you want a figure of Piccolo and you have similar opinions to me, this is probably the best one you can get for the time being. Number 2 is SH Figuarts Super Buu. It's interesting that this is the highest ranked Dragon Ball figure on this list, but the more I thought about it, he's just really, really good. He's aged super well. This one is from 2019, and he still feels like he fits in perfectly with modern stuff. He's about the right size. He's actually quite tall. He just cuts a really nice silhouette. He just looks cool standing there, and he looks cool doing anything that you make him do. It's one of those rare things that a figure can have sometimes where it just feels and looks nice basically all the time, no matter what you do with it. And I think he really has that characteristic going on. It's entirely possible that if I sat down and really thought about it, he might be my favorite Dragon Ball figure that I own. He's definitely very high up there, and obviously the highest one on this particular list. And number 1 is Limtoys Leon Kennedy from Resident Evil 2. And this was my top figure from 2021. And I think sitting down with all these figures and messing with them a little bit and sort of judging my feelings, and I felt like from my own objective opinion of my subjective opinion of things, that this was the best figure of these 10 figures. Which I guess should not be super surprising in some ways. He is the most expensive one, and therefore he's the most premium feeling one. Third-party full cloth 1/12 scale figures have really, really improved a lot in a very short period of time over the last few years. And I've gotten quite a few of them that I really, really enjoy. And I think this is definitely among my favorites of the ones that I own, and obviously is ranking number 1 on this list, so I clearly like it. I'm a big fan of Resident Evil. This figure looks almost perfect. He has an absurd amount of accessories that I will never use, but they're really cool. It's basically like having a museum of tiny props from the game. He's just a really cool figure to have, and I would recommend him very highly to anybody that likes Resident Evil. Especially since no official company seems to have any desire to make any Resident Evil figures at all. Third-party companies have been drip-feeding us little things here and there, which I've bought quite a few of. But since no one's willing to officially make anything, we're left with stuff like this. And stuff like this turns out, oftentimes, is quite cool. But I would still like to see some official stuff at some point. And I think that wraps us up for this list. As I said, that was from 2014 to 2023. I did have another top 10 list for 2024, which the Hero Toys Illidan Stormrage won. But I wanted to keep it to 10 years, especially since, like I said, I meant to make this video last year and then just didn't do it. But that ranks all of my first 10 figures from my first 10 top 10 lists that I've made over the past 10 years. And I don't know, I liked looking back at everything, doing a bit of a retrospective. There's a bunch of these figures that I've barely touched in years, especially the older ones. And it was cool to get to go back and revisit some stuff. and take some new photographs of some things that I haven't touched in a long time and sort of feel everything out and see how my opinions may have changed over the past 10 years. I wish I could have gotten this out sooner, but things happen. The only thing I expect to have coming out in the future is the top 10 list for this year, 2025, which I'll try to get out in December or January of next year. Somewhere around that time is generally when I try to do it. We'll see if I end up having to wait on any releases or anything like that, because I don't remember what I've got ordered or what's coming out or anything. But I will have a top 10 list for 2025 unless something spectacular happens and stops me from doing it, because it is the one video that I try to make every year. So that will be coming at the end of the year, which is only like 2 months from now. So yeah, until then, goodbye.